Okay, awesome. So we are now live. We have a wonderful guest. I'm super excited because it's something I'm very interested in learning about. Those on the call, Emily, I said, are pretty much around this area, somewhere in the United States, but we do have some people listening who have loved ones in this area. I'm broadcasting from southeastern Pennsylvania. So we have people from all over the area. And those on the call, you're welcome to use the chat function if you have some questions you want to ask. We'll go about an hour today. So, a little bit about who I am. I am a real estate broker. I'm coming on 40 years, which I know is a long time doing this. I love what I do, so it went really fast. And I do a lot of things. I wrote some books. I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of writing, like our guest, who is a content creator. So I do a lot of content as well, which I really enjoy writing. And I have some other people that are probably on the call or listening, maybe in the background silently. I have a partner, I have two team members that are all licensed and all help in our real estate practice. So now getting to our speaker. So Emily is our speaker today. This is a 501(c)(3), correct, Emily?
That's right.
So it's a nonprofit. They're actually headquartered. Here's a little fun fact. They're headquartered around the corner from our real estate office in St. David's, Radnor, Wayne. Emily, you've been with the organization 11 years. What I'm really impressed about is you're writing content and it's not AI content, it's you're actually writing all the content, which is really cool. And it's an awesome, awesome nonprofit that helped lots of people and raised tons of money for people that need help. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily to tell us a little bit about Hope Live and what that's all about.
Sure. I'm very excited to talk about it. I really sincerely love my job and I love this nonprofit. So I really feel more people should know about it. And when they do know about it, they can't wait to tell other people about it. So I'm so grateful to be here. So our nonprofit has a great origin story. We were founded actually in Villanova. The
Whoa.
founder was a heart transplant surgeon. This is back in 1983. So heart transplants were still pretty new at the time. His wife was a nurse, and the two of them realized that their patients were not able to get insurance coverage for a heart transplant. That's because at the time, insurance considered it to be an experimental procedure. So they felt that it wasn't fair that folks were being denied this life-saving opportunity because they couldn't pay for it. So they started Help Hope Live in 1983 to provide a way for people in their region to fundraise for these heart transplant costs. So in the decades since, we've expanded to cover just about any chronic condition you could imagine. So we expanded from transplant to broadly anything that's sort of a life-disrupting injury or a chronic illness, life-changing illness. So we're now in all 50 states. We've got thousands of, we call them clients, people who work with us to fundraise. And we have new clients starting with us literally every day that I'm at work. And we do maintain over this whole 43 years, we've maintained a 4-star Charity Navigator rating, which is the highest you can get. That rating puts us in the top 1% of charities in the country.
So does that mean like when you raise funds, like the percent of actual money that flows back to the people of need, is that one of the guidelines they look at?
That's right. Yeah. So Charity Navigator looks at a few things. One of the biggest factors that they look at is definitely fiscal responsibility and what percentage of the funds raised are actually being used to serve the mission versus things like marketing and paying salaries. So that's a huge area. They also look at transparency. They look at impact. They look at governance. It's a great platform for finding charities that are really reputable and worth supporting. So we're really proud to be in that 1%. We're not very well known on a national level by
Yeah.
everyone yet, but I think we deserve to be, based on the way that we operate and the work that we've done over the past few decades.
So can I ask this question? What about your founder in Villanova? Are they still part of this? And
Yeah, so Dr. Kolf, the transplant surgeon who founded Help Hope Live, did pass away. His
he did.
wife
Okay.
is still a part of the organization today as a supporter. She does attend our annual gala, so we still see her. And a lot of the founding members they were still working at the nonprofit when I started 11 years ago. So there's still a ton of local support, and we still have a lot of contact with the original team that helped to kind of bring the mission to life when it started.
Wow, what a story. That's really transplants, and now it's just flowed into everything. So I'm active in a whole bunch of other charities. I'm active. In fact, I'm actually working on a fundraiser right now for one. I'm working on one. It's a joint one with ALS and cancer because both of my parents were impacted by one of those horrific diseases. So that's what touches my heart. So like, are those two things part of your, fundraising? Like people that are impacted by ALS and cancer and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. So we started out with just heart transplants. That expanded to every type of transplant you could get. Today, we have a huge range of diagnoses that we work with. So ALS and cancer are definitely in there.
Okay.
A few others that come to mind are dementia and Alzheimer's.
Ah,
And then a big component would be brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, paralysis. But it really could be any kind of life-changing, long-term issue that you have from a medical perspective will probably fall within our guidelines. We're still adding additional diagnoses to our mission on a regular basis. So if you're living with something that has high medical costs associated with it and it's disrupting your life for the long term, it's probably within our program. So it could be something that you're born with, like cerebral palsy, spina bifida, or it could be something that you're diagnosed with later, like an ALS, cancer, MS, all within our guidelines. The only thing we don't cover would be something that thankfully is temporary. So if you break your leg, that might not be something that's sort of a long-term life-impacting disability. Beyond that, if it's a medical diagnosis that's changing your life, it's probably going to be within our guidelines for fundraising.
all right. So tell me a little bit about like how it does it have any impact with, when a health crisis comes and it forces like a housing decision, how is there any connection to your charity in that world? Because on these workshops, this is our 21st ABCs of senior housing. We talk, Emily, primarily about the difference between being proactive and reactive, right? So many of our listeners are seniors that are living in a house and are deciding, do they age in place or do they, go to a senior housing? And what we found is the reactive ones, something happens in health, forces a change, right? So do you get involved in that part of the process at all, or?
I would say probably the biggest overlap with what we do with housing is if you are living with a diagnosis that requires you to, let's say, use a wheelchair or use some
Okay.
kind of mobility device at home,
Okay.
or maybe just even be a caregiver for a loved one who is now living at home with unique medical needs, that could impact what your house needs to look like for that to be feasible, for aging
Okay.
in place to be feasible for you. So, two things that insurance often doesn't cover in the housing world would be home modifications for a
Yep.
wheelchair.
Okay.
So that would be, whether you would need to get into your front door. That could
Okay.
even be something that you need to do just to bring a loved one home or have a loved one with a wheelchair be able to live in that home. It could be accessing the upper floor of your house. Insurance might say, well, you can live on the bottom floor of your house, and it's not medically necessary for you to access the upstairs. But obviously, as somebody who's living in your own home, you need the upstairs. That's probably where you sleep. And to make those modifications to your home requires a lot of money out of pocket. So a lot of folks fundraise with us for those types of costs. Something like an accessible bathroom would also be a really big expense that insurance might help a little bit with the cost. They might say it's not necessary. They might say, well, your loved one doesn't really need an accessible bathroom because they can get a sponge bath or they can use a catheter, something like that. I mean, that's a great example where you know that it's necessary for you to make these changes, for you to continue to live in your home with this diagnosis. But your insurance might disagree and say, well, this isn't the only way to do it. There's a cheaper way. So that's the kind of case where without fundraising, it's probably going to be financially out of reach for you to make that happen. So that would be the hope would be that you could fundraise for those types of modification costs. Alternately, maybe you want to use money that you have for making housing decisions and your next steps, but you still need help on the medical side. So there's a lot of other costs you need to cover, and you can't do both. That would be a great case where fundraising with us would help you to fill the gap.
So tell us a little bit about the process, if you will, like exactly like how the fund maybe start with the fundraiser because we always think about the GoFundMe, right? And like people do that a lot, but how do you compare to like that type of a platform?
Yeah, I would say this is the number one most important thing to leave this conversation understanding. So how are we different from GoFundMe, which has become sort of synonymous with fundraising,
Yes.
in this day and age? So I have a lot to say about this, so I hope you'll stop me if you have questions,
No,
but
please.
I'll start with the big one. So I'm going to start with kind of what a real case looks like. We have a client who's local to Jersey. She's a crossing guard. Her name is Patrice. She is living with disabilities. She needed an accessible van to keep working. So she went to GoFundMe at the recommendation of, friends, family, they know GoFundMe. She raised enough money to get a van. When she raised that amount with GoFundMe, she received a letter in the mail that said that she was going to be losing her asset-based assistance. So she was losing her housing and she was losing her disability benefits
Whoa.
because she had raised too much money and that money was going to a bank account. So she had this,
Ooh.
tens of thousands of dollars for this van in her personal bank account. And her state looked at that and said, oh, you've made too much money to continue to qualify for your benefits. So that's a real scenario that we see on a regular basis here. GoFundMe is not going to tell you this. They're not going to warn you that this is the case. But if money goes into a personal bank account, it's considered your assets, your income. And that could cause you to exceed an income cap for benefits. Basically, you could be disqualified from your benefits as a result.
This
So
is
that's
huge. Like this is you're talking huge because I can't imagine like how many people just go to GoFundMe. Like, is there like any kind of analytic or statistic on that? Is that like, and then they get hurt, down the road from that?
I mean, I have to say it's a good portion of the folks that we work with. A good portion of our clients have some experience either looking into GoFundMe or starting a GoFundMe and then realizing that this is a serious financial risk for them.
Wow.
So I'll explain how we're different and
Please.
how we help you kind of avoid this.
Okay.
So with Help Hope Live, when you fundraise with us, instead of the funds going to your personal bank account, they're going to the organization Help Hope Live. We are administering all the funds raised. We're managing those funds. For our program, what we do is we keep the funds in what we call regional restricted funds. So instead of being in your personal bank account, they're in a certain region. For us, it would be the Mid-Atlantic region, is kind of
Okay.
here in this Northeast area, and they're
Okay.
being held in your honor. So when a donation is made, instead of donating to you, they're donating to Help Hope Live in your honor. That way, those funds are never hitting your personal bank account. They're not income to you. They're not assets to you. So the funds are then held with Help Hope Live, and we can directly pay your medical and related bills. So that way, those funds are never going into that personal bank account, should never jeopardize your benefit eligibility.
So then are you saying you have people on staff that are doing the bill paying? Is that what I'm hearing? Or
100%. Yes. So you
oh,
submit your bills to us. We actually have an online portal you can use to do that, to submit a fund request to us, and we will directly pay that bill for you. So that
wow.
could be, it could be, we can send a provider a check. We can also even do direct deposit. And in some cases, we can reimburse you. Like, let's say you need to do medical travel or medical relocation, and you're incurring some costs like parking, caregiving, anything like that. We'll be able to reimburse you with funds raised.
Wow. This is huge.
It's so little known, and I wish that there was just a big banner anytime somebody went to GoFundMe that said, "You have another option. This is not your best option for medical fundraising," because it really should be something that everybody knows.
Well, the flashing light went off, Emily. As I said, I'm a content creator, so my next content, like I get ideas when I talk to people and listen to things, like I can promise you that I will have content going out next week specifically about that because it can benefit so much of my audience. It's crazy. So thank you.
Oh, 100%. I'd love to help with that too.
Yeah.
If you would like to collaborate, on some
Okay.
articles. I'm
Yeah.
constantly telling people about this, even in my personal life, because you just never know if you're going to be in a situation where you need to fundraise, whether it's as you're aging, whether it's a child or a loved one who just has an emergency. It might just never occur to you that you have another option that's a lot safer. So that's really just one of our differences from GoFundMe. There's a few others that I can go through too. Um, a big one is that if you fundraise with us, because we're administering the money raised, the donations are going to be tax deductible. So
Huh.
that is a huge difference, and could be a big incentive for folks who want to give. It could also be an incentive for foundations, employer matching, working with businesses. Great incentive for them.
And unlike GoFundMe,
Um,
where there is no deductibility, correct? Is that?
Correct.
Yeah.
GoFundMe is
Okay.
not a charity. So
Okay.
since they're not a nonprofit, this is not going to be the case with them. So
Huh.
the tax deductibility is great. It also means you could be eligible for things like gift in kind donations. So if you're holding a fundraiser, maybe a local business wants to donate services or donate an item, and you can hold an auction. You have a lot of great options, using that nonprofit status.
Maybe I should
So
talk
yeah,
about my fundraiser, like turning that into and making it part of your company as well.
yeah, it sounds like it's going to be compatible,
Yes.
for sure. So, another thing that I want to just mention real quick
Okay.
is there is a medical verification component as well.
Okay.
So, this is huge because, especially over the last few years, there's been such a rise in concerns about scams with GoFundMe. Does this
Okay.
person really have cancer? Is this person really using the money for medical bills? With our organization, we verify your diagnosis directly with the medical provider. It's a very
Huh.
quick process.
Okay.
It's not like a big interview. We just ask, your doctor whether you really have the diagnosis. They sign off. And then anybody who wants to donate knows for sure with 100% certainty that it's legitimate. So you never have to be in a position where you have to prove that you're sick or prove that you have a medical need or a financial
Okay.
need. We'll do it for you. We'll take that burden off of you and confirm that there's a medical verification behind the campaign. So that's a huge help too because it's so uncomfortable to fundraise and to kind of put your business out into the world that you shouldn't have to then figure out how you're going to tell the story in a way that's going to prove that you really need the help. So it really kind of can be just a weight off for somebody who's fundraising, and anybody that they want to reach out to engage to help or to donate. So
Wow.
that's a big component too. So I'll hit on one more benefit, which I think is really
Okay.
important.
Please, I want you to.
Yeah,
Please.
as you can see, I could talk all day about
That's
this.
okay.
But
You're
so
passionate and you really
I,
do such great work that it just pours out of you, which is so awesome.
Yeah, that's really I talk to people about what we do all the time because I love it. I love the organization. But so one other big difference when you're working with a GoFundMe, you might have a little bit of support. They may offer you a couple of tools to help you fundraise, some guides and things like that. With Help Hope Live, you're being matched with a coordinator on our end who is going to provide one-on-one fundraising help to you for a lifetime. So that could be a phone call, that could be an email. It's going to be a long-term relationship with this person, and your coordinator is going to tell you exactly how to go about fundraising. They're going to help you figure out who's in your community. How do you share your story? How do you share on social media? How do you plan an event? Maybe this is your first time planning. Maybe you'd like to plan a 5K. Maybe you want to do some kind of online event. They are going to give you the fundraising 101 on a personal basis. So they're always going to be there to assist you. You can ask them any questions that you want. It's a real person always on the other end of the phone. And they're just going to guide you through the process, it could be a full-time job. Obviously, it is my full-time job to be involved in fundraising, but for somebody who's already dealing with a medical emergency or diagnosis, You need the help. You need somebody who can guide you through it. So that's what we provide. They can also make you materials. So maybe you'd like to have a flyer for an upcoming event. Maybe you want business cards you can hand out around town. If you would like to reach out to your local media, that could be great. I can write you a press release. We can send it out for you. They're going to really empower you with the tools and the guidance that you need to be as successful as possible with fundraising. So that's free. It's not something that's a paid service. It's free for all the clients that we work with.
So
Yeah.
go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry.
no,
Please
please
continue.
interrupt me before I
No,
talk all
no,
night.
no, no.
I just want to mention too, in the interest of transparency, that we do have an administrative fee. So we've got a 3% fee. That's to cover our operations, i.e., paying people like me and our coordinators, keeping our lights
Okay.
on. I think that's just important to mention that it is a part of our platform. What's great about the fee is that it's gone down over the time that we've been in operation. That's our goal, is to keep bringing it down. It also is something where when somebody donates, they can choose to cover that fee. So if they want to donate, let's say $100 in your honor, they can add extra on top of that to ensure that that $100 is all
It's
available for
pure
medical costs.
$100.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's an additional charge of 2.65% for credit card donations. So that would be that third-party processing through online payments. But same deal. The donor can choose to cover it so that you don't have to worry about those funds being taken out. And we're a charity, so all of the administrative fundraising is going to our operations. It's very transparent. You know where the money is going. You even know where the admin fee is going.
So how about these questions for you next? Like, can you talk about the actual fundraising? Like, how does this really work? Do you like how much time does it take? How much can you raise? Like, what are you seeing in some of these campaigns? I mean, what's a great campaign? What's an average campaign? I'm just curious to know what that looks like.
Yeah, great questions. So I'll say that getting started with us is a pretty quick process. You can reach out to us just to request that somebody calls you, reaches out to you personally to talk about what we do. It's going to be similar to the information you're hearing from me now,
Okay.
but that's really just to make sure it's a good fit for you. If it is a good fit, you'll fill out an application with us, and we'll set you up with an online campaign page. So that's going to look similar to what you've seen before with a GoFundMe. It's a very modern look and feel. Somebody can search for your name on our website and find you to make a donation in your honor. It's very modern, so it's going to look similar to what you've seen online before. Once you get started, it's immediately that one-on-one support comes in. So you're going to have the assistance, that you need to see what your next steps look like, identify your community, reach out. I would say in terms of how long it takes, for some folks, there's sort of a very urgent short-term need that they want to fundraise
Understood.
for
Okay.
first. I
Okay.
will say going into it, you might not even know what your costs are, which you may have experience with this too. I mean, with a diagnosis like cancer or ALS, you
Yeah.
might know that costs are coming. You don't know yet,
How
what.
much? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that's great about working with us is you don't have to know in advance what your costs are going to be. You just need to know there are going to be costs, and then you can go from there. So a lot of times folks will start with us with a goal around, it could be as low as 2,000, 5,000, maybe 10,000.
Okay.
Especially in the case of maybe a transplant, if you know that there's sort of something that you need to meet to be eligible. Sometimes you need to fundraise just to be eligible for a transplant. You have to be able to prove financial readiness. That could be a case where you know the number that you want to reach with fundraising. So that could be something where you're fundraising for a few months in the time leading up to a transplant, or you might be fundraising for a year or longer,
Okay.
just kind of to meet that initial need that you have. But if you're dealing with something that comes with a much higher price tag and life impact, so something like ALS, a spinal cord injury, a traumatic brain injury, you could be really looking at hundreds of thousands out of
Thousands.
pocket.
Yes.
So you might be fundraising for a much higher goal over years. So you don't have to make your goal public when you fundraise with us. If you
Okay.
want to, you can. We encourage you to because people like to support campaigns that look like they're have some momentum behind them. But you might set a goal of $1 million if you're living with a condition where you know it's going to be a multi-year, multi-decade need. And I have seen campaigns hit that level of fundraising for sure for a
Oh,
lifetime. We have clients who have been with us for 20 years, 30 years. They fundraise every year. and they are definitely reaching hundreds of thousands in terms of how much they've raised.
Now,
So I hope that,
Emily,
yeah.
how about the reverse situation, the one that I'm planning, which is so both of my parents have passed away from these horrific illnesses, and I want the funds to go back to, ALS Hope and the American Cancer Society, not to a particular person per se, for general use. How does that play into this process?
Yeah, it's a good thing to bring up. So if you work with us, and if you decide to stop fundraising, you're done fundraising, you don't need the funds that you've raised, or if the person who's fundraising does pass away,
Okay,
those funds are going to remain in the region. So we're
got it.
talking about those funds staying in that mid-Atlantic region, for instance, that those funds can then be used to cover other medical bills in that same region.
Understood.
So it's going to
Okay.
be people in the same area, same or similar diagnoses. So it is kind of supporting the nonprofit as a whole, but kind of through making sure other campaigns can also continue to work with us.
And is there any
Yeah.
path if you wanted to designate any portion for research? Is that part of this?
We don't really have a research component
Okay.
to what we do. So I would say you probably can't you can't really take funds that have been raised in honor of an individual and then designate them somewhere else
Okay.
outside. But I will say that you can still use the funds for medical costs you have even after somebody passes away. So that's kind of an important component too. So that could be funeral costs, burial costs, things like that. It is still possible to do that. And we've had some folks do is set up funds with us that can help to kind of give a starting point to folks who are starting. So
Okay.
if you wanted to set up a fund, for instance, for ALS families in the area, then you could make it possible through us to start them off with, let's say, $1,000 grant. So when they start fundraising, they start from that $1,000 level, which is great. So there's definitely some compatibility there. Yeah, not necessarily with the research side, though.
Okay. All right. So tell us a little bit about, what can be covered. I know you touched on a lot of this stuff, but I don't know if you got into the travel when you have to go, what about if you have to go overseas or something? I don't know. Where does that, is there a fine line on, what can be covered and what's not?
Honestly, it's not a fine line at all. It's very broad. I
Really?
would say everything that we do is around medical expenses and related costs. That idea of related costs is very broad for us. If you can make a case for it from a medical standpoint, we can generally get it approved as an expense that we can cover.
Okay.
It is very broad. So, yes, overseas travel, let's say you need to travel for specialized treatment in another country. Yes, that's something you could fundraise for. It could also be costs could range from regular copays and medical bills to your everyday medical travel just to get to, your doctor's office or a transplant center. It could be caregiving. It could also be in the realm of also with home modifications. It could be assistive technology. Maybe you need to make changes to your home so you can use Alexa to turn your lights on and
Okay.
off,
Yep.
from your wheelchair. A specialized wheelchair could be part of it. Could be a service dog. Mental health services is a great one. Medical relocation is a big one too. So you might need to relocate just to get a loved one cutting edge treatment in another state, for instance. Definitely going to be covered. So if a cost comes up that we haven't seen before, as long as you can get a medical professional to confirm that it's something that is medically helpful to you, it's going to be
Okay.
covered for sure.
Okay.
And one I want to point out from the housing perspective too is we do have a component of our program, which is for emergency living expenses.
Huh.
That's going to be over a 3-month period if you are dealing with, let's say the primary wage earner in your household has been impacted by a medical issue. This would be 3 months of assistance with mortgage, rent,
Wow.
HOA, utilities. So that 3 months helps to give you a head start, on making your plans for your next steps, which could involve housing and housing changes too.
So is that 3 months for explain just if you could just a little more detail on that. Is that someone new to your system that comes in that has a medical need? Do they get that benefit right out of the gate, or is it based on they have to do the fundraising first? How does that work?
Yeah, so this would still be a cost that you would be able to have covered after you fundraise. So you'd
Okay.
fundraise with us first,
Okay.
and then once you kind of have that fundraising foundation going, you'd be able to then have this as one of the costs that you could submit to us to be paid, as a bill. So that's sort of the only real requirement for you to start submitting bills to us after you start is to have the medical verification in place, which is
Place.
usually really
Okay.
quick. But aside from that, you can start fundraising right away, submitting bills to us right away. So this would be in that category.
And you touched on something that's an awesome segue into something I talk about in all my workshops is our home concierge service. You mentioned about the age in place and all the various things that someone might need who decides to age in place. So something we put together, Emily, is a concierge service. It's a free service. So if anyone on the call needs help with any of those types of vendors, we have access to all kinds of vendors, from lifts to wheelchair vendors to special people that can come in and put grab bars in your shower, anything along those lines. If you want to not just age in place, we also have other things for other homeowners that need help with like painters or, electricians, plumbers. So it's a free service. You can call us. We're happy to give a vendor, and we do check. We like to know once if we send you somebody that's going to install a lift in your house, we will call and check how was the person, did they do a great job? Were you happy with them? Because we don't want to give people out that aren't going to be a good reflection on ourselves. So we do try to monitor the vendor really well and make sure that people are happy with them.
That's wonderful. I mean, those are all those costs listed are things that come up all the time. Even mold is a big one for transplant
Oh,
patients. Sometimes
yes.
they can't stay in their home after transplant without some kind of mold mitigation. So that's great that you offer that.
Yeah, and that's also, the mold thing could be something that could take, a week, could take a month, it might require them to go to another house while it's being done, not being in that environment when it's being mitigated.
Yeah, those costs just add up and add up and add up. And you might think insurance is going to help you out, but nine times out of ten, there's something they just don't cover. Or you got to really fight for it. Yeah.
So that brings us up to our, kind of planning ahead section where we talk about, protecting your financial stability and your equity during the health challenge. You touched on that a little bit. Could you get into some more detail about like, the housing decisions and the home equity and about the stress and how you get involved in that whole process?
I mean, I will say that I think this having kind of your housing be in flux especially because of a medical crisis of some
Yeah.
kind, is so stressful. Home is just kind of that source of emotional comfort for so many of us, in addition to the physical security and safety. So the last thing you want to do is have to consider making a huge change when you're already dealing with the challenges of a major medical diagnosis or crisis. But I do think, as you've put here, that considering your options early is really important. So if you can start to see that there's going to be a financial burden based on the diagnosis that you're living with or a loved one is living with, act early, get fundraising started. Explore your options. Clearly, there are excellent free resources available to you to navigate this. But I think there's a lot of great information out there about how much some of these things could cost you if they relate to, a medical diagnosis, wheelchair access, home modifications. The bill is sky high, but you don't have to cover those costs alone. So if you're working with us or, if you do decide to start fundraising, even if it's not with us, I think starting early is really important, even before you're positive what kind of housing costs might come into play. And if you are traveling for medical care and thinking you might need to relocate for medical care, medical travel is also something that is a great cost to fundraise for in advance. Um, yeah, so I think housing is a big part of the picture. It really depends on whether you need to make a big change, or if you're just trying to sort of cover a financial shortfall that's being caused by a medical diagnosis. But either way, I think exploring your options early is essential.
And Emily, could you tell us a little bit about like what would you say one of your most successful like fundraisers? Is it something that involves entertainment? Is it something that involves like I don't know, like axe throwing. I mean, what is there an event or something that comes to mind? You said, "Wow, this just really blew me away," and they raised so much money, and people were so interested in it, and it just raised a ton of money.
We've had so many of those. What's really neat is that some things are very regional when it comes to fundraising.
Okay,
So, Northeast, big one, beef and beer. People love a beef and beer. In the Northeast, in the South, they've never heard of it. So, beef and beer
interesting.
fundraiser is a great example. I think what generally tends to happen is you might start out with fundraising with smaller events. Maybe you want to do like a painting with a twist, or you want to do yard sales, bake sales. Maybe you start small. You might want to then figure out how you can sort of establish an annual event that's going to really bring in a large amount of funds in your honor at once. So that's usually going to be your golf tournaments, your 5Ks. That's where we usually see that jump up to one big fundraiser that you plan a year. So the folks that do that, who are successful with that, who are raising tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands a year through those events, usually they're doing it with a team. So they kind of have a team of friends or family members who are kind of volunteering their time to help make it happen. It's sort of a committee approach. So anybody who's volunteered with nonprofits probably knows how that goes. You kind of meet with folks, figure out the best strategies. Everybody lends their time to it, and then you kind of bring these larger events to life. So those are often really successful. But one cool one in the Northeast that I love is we have a client out of Ambler who has a curlathon, a curling marathon fundraiser every
Huh.
year. He's now in, I think, his 19th year of holding this curlathon. It is his one big fundraiser every year. Very successful. People love to attend it. So that's a great example. It really is. If you've got a community of curlers or any hobby that you could be interested in or that your community is interested in, you can pull it into a major fundraiser with our help for sure.
The one I'm working on, and I did my first annual one many years ago, but specifically for ALS, is we actually have the benefit, our family owns a bowling center. So we call it, it was the black and blue bowl. So, you know, you had blue jeans and black tie, and you get to go bowling. And we had all kinds of vendors donate food and stuff. And we had some of our clients who were able to um, help with funding and everything. So it raised a good bit of money, and that's the one we want to try to. I actually want to get back and try to do it on an annual basis.
Love that. Love a bowling fundraiser. That's a great example. And sometimes you don't necessarily think about these options right
Yeah.
away if you're new to fundraising, but that's why it's nice to talk to somebody because then you can kind of get these ideas and who's in your community? What do your friends like to do? What about your extended family? What about maybe you have fellow grads from education? Who knows where that community is going to come from? But if they've got an interest, then you can make it into a successful fundraiser. People love to give, they love to get involved, they love to have fun while they're doing it. It's an easy sell, once you know what you want to get going.
And the support of for these events, then is it your there's that one-on-one support you mentioned earlier on our webinar that your company is able to help guide with the marketing and help with the PR and all these things. It could be overwhelming for someone, right, that has never done this before and has doesn't really know what direction to take. It seems like that core help is so critical what you're offering, which is really amazing.
I don't know how you would do it unless you had prior professional experience doing it without help. I mean, it's like a whole new job to learn if you're new to fundraising. So sometimes you need help with, 101. How do I write my story? How do I reach out? Should I send a letter to my community? It could be that simple. Maybe over the years, you start to think, okay, now I want to plan a big time fundraiser. What's required? Who should I talk to? No matter where you are in that process, we're really there for you to help. But another great part too, especially when it comes to if you're the individual who's experiencing a medical diagnosis, a health issue, you might not have the time, the
Yeah.
energy to bring these things to life. But what we can do is we can work directly with somebody in your life who is available. So maybe a child, maybe a parent, maybe a cousin, a loved one, a coworker. If there's somebody in your community who's motivated and has time to help, we can talk to them directly. We'll work with them to plan fundraisers in your honor. So you can take some of the burden off that way. But we can also connect you to folks who have been through this process themselves. A lot of our clients have become ambassadors for us because they've been
Huh.
successful. They love what we do. So they volunteer their time to talk to new clients, to talk to them about how they've been successful and how to stay encouraged, and motivated when you fundraise. So there's that peer-to-peer support aspect of it too, which is great. We have a ton of ambassadors in the Northeast, in PA.
So
So it's great.
how large of an organization is it with the number of like people and all on your board and in the organization?
I would say we're probably at about 20 people total.
Wow,
So
good
it's a
size.
very small team. I
Yeah.
mean, it's really, we're talking personal support. We're talking a
Okay.
real person on the phone every time you call, real person answering your emails. It's small, but all of us love the organization, love our job. You can just tell when you talk to people who work here.
What a
Um,
mission. Wow.
yeah, it's wonderful. So we also do fundraising annually for our own operating expenses. That's kept totally separate. So that's considered unrestricted funding. So if we, we have our 5K event that takes place locally in May. We have our annual gala in October. That's how we cover our own costs in addition to the admin fee. But funds raised in honor of clients are only for medical costs. There's no overlap there. So we all work really hard to make sure that we can still keep the organization going, while having those funds available for those medical costs too.
Wow, amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm gonna actually uh see if we had I didn't see any questions. So you're either doing an awesome job, Emily, with details, which I think you are. I think you covered tons of stuff. I had like a whole bunch of questions, and I have to tell you, I think you've answered just about every single one of them. So I'm
Oh,
kind of
glad.
speechless on my end, but certainly if anyone on the call has some questions and they want to post it in the chat, feel free to, because kind of before we close, um, I kind of know, I think I know the answer to this question, but the number one thing that attendees can take away from today, what would you say that one thing is?
I mean, I'm sure you can guess it, but I would say do not start a GoFundMe until you
Okay.
understand that there are
Yeah.
other options out there if you are looking for medical fundraising help. So I know that we're not the right fit for everybody, and if you do decide you want to fundraise, but you can't do it through Help Hope Live, we still
Okay.
want you to have the tools that you need. So you might want to start a campaign with us. If you decide to start a campaign elsewhere, I'm writing content on a regular basis to help people learn how to fundraise. That's part of my job. I love writing too, like you do. So
Yeah.
use our guides anyway. Reach out even if you just want some direction on how to get started. With fundraising or with exploring your options for resources, we want to help you too. So even if we're not a fit for you, think about fundraising as a step that you can take that can really take a lot of the weight off. It's very hard to get started. It's for people who are helpers and like to give back. It's really, really hard to ask for help. But you deserve it. You shouldn't be facing a financial burden when you're already facing a medical crisis. There's help out there for you, and you're really giving people a gift when you let them help you. That's the gift you give to them. You're saying to them, you get to feel great about getting involved with this, helping, making a difference, being a part of my journey. You really have to embrace that. So it's hard to ask, but it's absolutely worth having that confidence and that hope that help is out there for you and that people want to get involved and help. So don't be too afraid or too proud to think about fundraising, whether it's with us or elsewhere.
So I did get one question, and the question was, which is a really good question actually, was someone is struggling with a loved one that has a medical issue, and they're trying to figure out senior housing options. What steps would you think they should take like immediately? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say now, of course, I'm only going to speak to what we do, but
Okay.
if you think that you might be facing some medical related costs, reach out to us, start a fundraiser, see if we can maybe help you to take some of that weight off so that when you go to make those housing decisions, you aren't stuck in this cage of medical costs and expenses that are adding up. So if we can help with the medical side of those costs, we'd love to. But if you want to speak to the other side of your options with senior housing, feel free to, of course.
And what about Emily, from a timing perspective? What would you say is like a really quick time that somebody could get a fundraiser going? And what do you think an average time is? Do you have like analytics on that?
I mean, I would say my analytics mostly come from my own brain after
Okay.
working here for this time, but
Okay.
um, off the bat, I would say start fundraising before you know what you need. Like I was saying before, don't wait until you have a bill looming, fundraise first, then you'll have some breathing room when that bill does arrive. I would say getting started with us, you can do in a matter of a week or two. You can get up and running and start fundraising.
Okay.
I've seen folks meet their goal within a few weeks to a month if they have a big, motivated, loving community. Not everybody
Huh.
has, a community that's financially able to jump
True.
in like that. If you
Yeah.
do, if you have some contacts and you're willing to put it out there, then you could definitely meet your goal within a few weeks or in some cases a few days. We've definitely seen it happen. I would say more realistically, I would probably plan for if I was gonna start fundraising, I would plan for about a year of ramping up and fundraising. So you
Okay.
might be requesting funds during that time, but I would say think about it in kind of a year. How do you want this fundraising campaign to go within that year? That's sort of how I would think about it. And you might be fundraising for a short-term need. You might be fundraising with us for a lifetime. We're happy to help you for a lifetime if your costs are going to keep adding up. So it can kind of be on your own timeline for sure.
This is like this is like, I'm so happy to have you. Like you're literally like, your organization's literally like right around the corner. And oops, we might have lost Emily. Anyway, Emily, you're right around the corner, um, which is awesome. And you do such great stuff. There you are. You're back.
Well,
We
sorry
lost
about
you for
that.
a second. It's
Yeah, I
okay.
got kicked out, but I'm back.
It's okay. Well, we call it, for those in the beginning of the workshop, we have what's called like Zoom traffic sometimes. So sometimes there's like Zoom traffic jams and things like that happen to us all the time. So no worries.
Oh, thank you.
But I was saying that I'm so honored to have you because number one, your headquarters are literally around the corner from our office, right? That's the first thing. Your founder was a transplant surgeon in Villanova. Like that's also like right around the corner. And you do such great stuff. And your I think your ability to help people, and this happens, it's just so unexpected. Like life happens, and it's the helping with the cost. That's just it could take a huge weight off of somebody's shoulders.
Yeah, sometimes it's really just necessary. We kind of see it as sometimes you're forced to fundraise. This is your only option, to meet your needs and you deserve to have those needs met. Or if you're advocating for a loved one, like this question we got in the chat, you just want the best for your loved one. And it's so frustrating to deal with a system that considers what your loved one needs to not be medically necessary. But that's why we exist. We wish we didn't have to exist, but that's
Yeah.
exactly why we're here so that you don't have to experience a financial crisis just to meet those needs.
So
I'm
Emily,
thrilled to be here. I appreciate it
okay.
so much.
I just want to make sure I have, hopefully you can see my laser if it's aligned properly where I am on the presentation. Where is that the best URL for them, for everyone who's listening, or those that will be listening down the road to reach out to start the process?
That's a perfect way to do it. If you just even go to our helphopelive.org website, you'll
Okay.
see a Get Started button right
Just
on
right
there.
here. Okay,
Start
right
there.
here.
It's that
Okay.
simple.
Okay.
And I know my contact information is also in this presentation. So if anyone just is not 100% sure or wants more information, as you can see, I love to talk about what we do. So you're welcome to reach out to me personally too.
That's awesome. And then I'm gonna say a couple things for those on the call or those that couldn't make it today due to weather, other things. I had a lot of people, Emily, actually, that did reach out that said, we signed up, but can't make it today. I'm like, no problem. We're going to record it. And in about another week or so, we'll clean up the recording, we'll send it out and rebroadcast it. So we'll be sharing it. And those on the call, if you want to connect with us in any of our social media platforms, you're welcome. We do the ABCs of Senior Housing. That's a monthly. This is our 21st workshop we do that we've conducted, and we get lots of great feedback, and it helps tons of people. So we're happy to do it. Is there anything else, Emily, that you think people should need to know, like a final like thought you want to leave for people?
I really think I've said enough. However, I will say that if you happen to be local, like Brett is to our area, we'd love to see you at our 5K. We've got a 5K fundraiser coming up on May 16th in Radnor. It's going to be at the Radnor Corporate Center. Come stop by if you're interested. Then you can see some of the rest of our team in action.
I will be there because it's literally like I can walk from our office to the Radnor Corporate
We would
Center
love
from
that.
here.
That would be
Yeah,
great.
so and that's awesome. And then your annual event, you said you had that helps with your administration. When is that actually held?
Yeah, so we have an annual gala. It's called, excuse me, it's called Live It Up.
Okay.
And that gala takes place in October, end of October every year. So right now we're waiting for the Eagle schedule before we make our plans for the
Understood.
night.
I can understand.
But we would absolutely love to have folks join us for that too. So if you want to be, kept up to date about our upcoming events, I'm happy to take emails. If folks want to email me, I can add you to our email list. We would love that. We'd love to see you guys there.
And anyone also on the call, if you want to listen to any of the other pre-recorded, the other webinars that we've recorded, there's 21 of them. You're welcome. You can just visit the site and you can listen to them at your convenience. But that's pretty much going to wrap it up today, Emily. I want to thank you again for spending your Saturday. It was an awesome topic. I learned so much. I am going to be working on a blog next week specifically about stay away from GoFundMe. Um, and the reasons why, because so many people don't know that and they need to know that. So that's my big takeaway for today. But I want to thank you again and have a wonderful Saturday, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon.